know how they often say, begin with the end in mind? Well, here I am at the end of this story that I'm going to share with you today, not realizing how long it was going to take me to get to this part of the story. I'm excited to share with you today the transformation of my sewing/craft room and all the updates I've made in this space to make it truly something special. As we move through the video, I'm going to show you the transformation and the fun before and afters, but I hope, like most of my videos, that it will leave you inspired to ask yourself a few questions and get moving on some projects of your own, whether they be home decor or not. Now, most stories have to start at the beginning, so I'm going to take you back to this very embarrassing before picture of what this room has looked like for, unfortunately, probably a few years. This is a space in our home that is a catch-all, hide everything when people come over kind of room. We don't have a lot of big storage rooms in an old farmhouse, so this has become my craft space, my gift wrapping station, the kids' Lego station, and pretty much anything and everything in between. So it's not really fun to hang out in this room, and I decided enough was enough. I really want a space that I can go into and not feel overstimulated and just be ready to create. And so today I'm working on a few finishing touches as we walk through what the last few months have looked like, redoing this space, transforming it finally into the sewing room of my dreams. Today I am sewing a few curtains that I want to use on the front of my shelving here in the sewing room to hide some of the storage things I have, because inevitably I have to store some things in this room because, like I said, I don't have a lot of storage options. So I've narrowed it down to keeping our keepsake items in this room along with other items that of course I use for sewing or crafting. So there's a few, eyesores that I want to cover up. So I bought some really cute ticking stripe fabric and I'm making a few panels that I'm going to show you how it all comes together here soon. When I set out to redo this space, the first thing I do is I sit down and I think about what the space is needed for, and I write down those needs. And then I write down maybe a few wants, and then I like to sketch out what I'm thinking as far as layout, maybe the colors, and start looking at Pinterest for a little bit of inspiration, of course. This really helps me narrow down what is needed in the space and what needs to be decluttered from it. Because in spaces like this, where it tends to be a catch-all, it's important to keep that in mind. Now the baby is up from her nap. I have my panels sewn, but I think I want to add some pleats to it. So I'm going to go look at a few ways to do this. I recently really enjoyed this tutorial on different styles of curtains and different types of pleats. And I learned it all on this class on Craftsy, which happens to be the sponsor of today's video. Craftsy is your online destination for all things creative. So you guys know this website is right up my alley. You can learn all sorts of things. They have all different classes from knitting and crocheting, quilting, sewing, cake decorating, cooking, baking. There's a million things you can learn on this site. I love that you can learn the techniques from people that are really masters in their craft. So the woman that I watched do all of these pleats for all the curtains, it just made me feel like I was learning expert tips and tricks. And so I loved that about their site. I also look forward to checking out more of their videos on cake decorating and sugar cookies as we are getting closer to the holidays. And I just want to continue to hone in on my skills and continue to improve them over time. If this also sounds fun to you, be sure to check out my link in the description box below. The first 1,000 people that click on my link will get a full year of the premium membership for only $1.49. I hope you find some amazing classes to take, and thank you again so much to Craftsy for sponsoring today's video. So I decided to go through with a butterfly pleat, which seemed like a really simple little pleat. I didn't want anything too fancy because we live in an old farmhouse here and I like to keep it really simple. And so I thought this was just a nice way to kind of dress up the pleats, because part of me just wanted to like clip the panel up there and walk away and call it good. But I really did enjoy the hand sewing of this and making it feel a little bit more special since I've already put so much love into this room. Here we are in my room here, and I just have to say, it's still a mess. And it's like I keep thinking there's going to be this magical time where I'll just happen to have a free weekend where it's going to be like Lauren's time to fix up her special room here and do all the things. But the reality is that's never going to happen. And so I have to start doing these little things like buying the wallpaper and then putting the wallpaper up. And once I get momentum on my side, then we can hopefully continue. And in the little increments of time, we will accomplish something amazing in here. But again, I have to stop waiting for the perfect time, the perfect day, whatever. Like, we got to do this. All right. So lesson 1 on a huge, obnoxious project like this is to just commit. Just decide that you're going to do it and it's going to get done. So let's roll up our sleeves and turn on some good music because we have a lot of work to do. I am going to go through my fabric stash and again, donate a whole bunch of it until it fits into these containers. And then I have them temporarily labeled here because I'm going to make nicer labels for my sewing room. But in the meantime, they will at least have a home and it will be labeled during this whole process. Now, I went ahead and ordered this wallpaper online because I loved the print of it and it's going to help me decide the rest of the colors. As you saw there, I like to measure with my body, as do a lot of women. I know I'm not the only one. You're not going to grab the tape measure all the time. Sometimes you just use your body to measure and then order. It works out most of the time. Now, I feel like lesson number 2 in all of this is to just find pockets of time to do the things that you want to do because life is busy. We have a lot of things going on and I don't have a free weekend to just do an entire room. So I had to find little 1 hour, 2 hour maybe pockets of nap time to do projects like this. So the wallpaper got done first because I was super excited when it came in the mail. A person probably could paint first and then do wallpaper, but it worked out just fine in this order. So I got a contact paper and I'll link it for you below. I do think it's gorgeous, but I'm just going to be honest with you while we're doing this, that it worked out great until about a month later. Then it started to shrink a tiny bit and it came apart. So you can kind of see it a little bit. It's not real noticeable and it's not bad enough that I'm going to redo it or anything, but I just wanted to be open and honest with you about that. And before I go to linking things, I just want you to know what my experience was like. But other than that, I absolutely love the colors and I can live with the little imperfections. I tried to overlap it and do all of the things, but probably should have read the reviews a little bit closer on this one. I have another video where I did the peel and stick wallpaper in my daughter's bedroom, and I still have had great success with that peel and stick wallpaper. So I'll try to link that and the video because I very much still love the print in her room too, and it never did separate. If you're looking for a really pretty print, I will link that one for you as well. The trickiest thing with peel and stick wallpaper is to line up the designs. So you don't always just go to the next panel and it lines up perfectly. You kind of have to alternate them a little bit to find where the vines meet each other and where the colors make sense so that it all looks like one big sheet. And this is especially challenging in an old farmhouse where the ceiling and the floor maybe aren't as level as they used to be. And so a lot of times I feel like I'm crooked in areas and it took me a while to get that lined up. But I found little tips and tricks as I went along, and an X-Acto knife is very helpful on these corners. I decided to just do the little triangle areas later instead of trying to put that whole sheet up there, and that really helped me. And you can't tell at all, as long as you line up your design, you're good to go. Okay, making lots of progress in here. It's echoing. It's so empty in here. I don't think this room has ever been so empty as the last time I painted the floor. I asked the people at the hardware store to make sure that the white paint I got had a good primer in it, because I'm not gonna name names, but someone used Sharpie on my wall in here. This room has been in some desperate need of new paint for a while. As you can see, we've had little repairs over time, and my kids have spilt things on the floor, drawn on the floor. I haven't painted this room since we moved in over a decade ago, and so there's been a lot of life that's happened in this room with 3 little kids at the time. and now 4. So it's time to freshen it up, and I just wanted everything to feel very big and bright in here. So I'm repainting all of the walls white, and then I'm gonna do a fun color on the trim. And then repaint the floor. So this is a 360 paint job in this room. So we have to get everything completely prepped and cleaned up first. It's amazing how many little things you forget about until you go to paint. Oh, I need a screwdriver. I have to go and take all these little things off. So again, working in the pockets of time that you have to just prep things is gonna save you from, well, finishing or not finishing, to be quite honest. Sometimes I find it helpful to just list out the next 3 steps, break it down into things that you can do in those pockets of time. Of course, once you open a can of paint, you're kind of on a time crunch. I did have to take a break in between coats of paint, or if someone needed me, I was able to just slide my roller inside of a bag and it would stay nice and wet so that if I came back to paint within an hour or 2, or even overnight, it was ready to go. So that's one little hack that saves you some time when you're painting too, so you're not constantly washing out your brushes and starting over. One other little painting thing I learned during this project is that painter's tape is pretty overrated, honestly. I ended up using it, of course, to block off my wallpaper here, but I bought myself a decent trim brush and I ended up just using that everywhere instead. And as long as I just was kind of slow and steady with it, I found that I had a lot more crisp, clean lines than I would have with painter's tape. It seems like every time I use painter's tape, they end up bleeding through and I end up with wonky lines, and it's so frustrating. So I just bought myself a nicer trim brush this time, and I even very carefully detailed out our windows up here, and I almost wanted to skip that step this time too, but I'm so glad I did it.
This has about done me in, but the trim and the ceilings and the walls are done. Now it is time for this ugly floor to get a transformation.
Now that the trim is painted in this room, I actually don't mind the dark gray floors, but either way, I needed to repaint the floor. So I'm gonna start over there in the corner and work my way out of the room, of course. And I picked a kind of a green undertone paint. It turned out a little bit more green than I was intending for it to be. It's going to dry a little bit darker than this, as you'll see in the video, but this room kind of made it look a little bit more green. Like my trim here looks more green in this video, but it's actually more of a tan color. So I hope that that will appear better to you guys in the daylight, but I wanted to just add a little bit something different. I'm often drawn to just doing black and white and gray or tan. And so I thought, let's do a little bit more, something more fun on the floor. Of course, I think it would be ideal eventually to just completely strip these floors back to what they were in their former glory, but they had already been painted when we bought this house, and I painted them again, and this is the 3rd time they've been painted. So I went ahead and went with the quick win here, but I thought that the green was fun and something a little bit more experimental than I would probably do in the rest of my house, and I really like how it turned out. Now, the flooring has been painted for about a week, so I figure it's more than ready to put this furniture in here. My daughter is filming here, and that's why we're a little bit shaky. I was going to mention that my toxic trait must be having my husband move furniture from our upstairs to our basement, and then from the basement back upstairs again. I just love to play this game with him. And he must really love me because he goes along with it every time. He rarely asks questions. That's he's a good one. I've had this old shelf. It's from Walmart, and I've had it for a really long time. I used it for kids' toys with the bins on it, and it's moved to the basement as an entertainment center. And now I've decided to move it back up here, honestly, because I am on a fairly tight budget and I don't feel like buying new furniture right now. My dream would be to have something beautiful and antique with lots of drawers. But again, right now, it's just not in the cards. And so I thought I'm going to use what I have and just rethink it, even if it means moving things from the basement to the upstairs again. But I really like how it turned out in this space, and I feel like it helps to showcase my cute little containers and put that space together in just a more thoughtful manner and more organized. I think sometimes the best thing we can do is shop around our house first and just try to reimagine what we already have. Saves us a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of energy. I've had these storage containers for a long time too, and before I had them stacked up so that they were doubly high, but I decided it might look really nice and tidy just to have them all underneath my cutting table. So when I need to pull out some fabric and put it up on my cutting table, it's all right there. And I also, again, am going to try to hold myself to only having enough fabric that fits in these containers, and that will help the overflow and the extra chaos in this room. Speaking of my fabric stash, I had several ticking stripes, so I hung them up here to see which one I thought would be the best suitable option to go with my wallpaper for covering these old shelves. So I ended up having to order fabric because I didn't have enough of one, like enough yardage to do both of my shelves. So I went with the lighter color here. And as you saw, we started working on those at the beginning of this video, but I'm getting ready to show you how it looks. Again, I'm reusing these metal shelves. They're not my favorite. I think they were from Target originally, but they're serving a purpose right now, holding our large storage containers for our keepsakes. That is one thing I have planned to continue to do in this room, is to house our keepsakes. And so I have a bin for each of my kids, and I got that idea from the Minimal Mom. If you watch her here on YouTube too, she has some amazing ideas. These memory bins are nice too. I need to get a fourth one now for baby Ruth, but I plan on making some nicer labels for those, and that's where I just keep those little baby keepsakes and the things that I want maybe to keep for them to hand down someday. I also plan to keep these file boxes on top of the wire shelves, especially since they don't really have a top on these wire shelves. I want it to look nice and finished, so I'm getting matching boxes to go on the other side, and those are the file boxes I'll keep for my kids for pre-K through high school, whatever kind of paperwork I want to keep for them. So I have some really cute things that they've made in kindergarten here and there. I just like that that will be a really convenient place to file paperwork away and keep it nice and tidy in here, so that when I'm sewing in here late at night, I don't have to look at all the clutter. I can just enjoy this new peaceful space. Now, without further ado, I would like to show you the final project. So this room is now full of just the things that I love. And it turns out that when you have less stuff in your room, you can be that much more creative. Even my kids have loved this room so much more because there's so much free space for creativity. So I'm just here to tell you today that it took me a long time, but the end was still worth it. This room makeover has reminded me many times that this is a journey. I left the Rustic Honey on the back of my door in chalkboard because I did that when we first moved in, and this is where I started my business over 10 years ago. And to think of how far it has come, and how many memories this room has held, and how many more there are to come, it motivates me to just enjoy the journey, keep going, and to dream up the next project. Showing up from the start, to keep the end in mind, but to keep working towards it. No matter what you're working on, even if it takes a year, even if you have to start over, even if life happens, just keep going. What if you didn't quit? It could turn out differently than you had imagined it would, but what if you also learn a whole bunch along the way? It'll still be worth it. So keep after whatever it is you are working on, and I promise you that if you keep the end in mind, pretty soon you'll find yourself at the end and be so excited about your finished project.